Most people don't realize they are being manipulated until the moment they call the manipulation their own idea. That is how power really works, not like a chain around your wrists, but like a whisper inside your mind. And the most unsettling part is this. What if the door manipulators used to enter your life was never forced open, but quietly left unlocked by your own needs, fears, and desires? Human beings like to believe they are rational. We like to imagine that our choices rise from logic, dignity, and independence, as if every decision were carved by a clear and sovereign mind. But history, psychology, and ordinary life reveal something far more humbling. We are not moved only by truth. We are moved by hunger. Hunger for belonging, for certainty, for identity, for emotional safety. And wherever there is hunger, there is influence. Wherever there is emotional need, there is someone, something, or some system ready to shape it. This is why people are so easy to manipulate. Not because they are stupid, not because they are weak, but because they are human. Think about it. The human mind was not designed primarily to discover objective truth. It was designed to survive. And survival, for most of our history, depended less on being correct and more on staying connected to the tribe. To be accepted meant safety. To be rejected meant danger. So deep inside your nervous system, beneath all your modern language and digital sophistication, there is still an ancient alarm that asks a simple question. Am I safe with these people, or am I alone? That one question has guided more human behavior than most of us will ever admit. It shapes what we say, what we hide, what we pretend to believe, and what we allow others to define for us. This is why manipulation often doesn't feel like oppression at first. It feels like relief. Relief from uncertainty, relief from loneliness, relief from the exhausting burden of thinking for yourself in a world that never stops demanding answers. The manipulator doesn't always arrive as a villain. Sometimes they arrive as a savior, sometimes as a lover, sometimes as a charismatic leader, a persuasive influencer, a trusted friend, a trend, an ideology, a brand, even a beautifully edited video that seems to understand your pain better than the people around you. Manipulation is rarely sold as control. It is sold as comfort. And maybe that is what makes this truth so difficult to confront. Many of the forces that shape your mind do not attack your weaknesses. They seduce your needs. They study what you long for and hand it back to you in a form that serves their purpose. They learn your insecurities, your hopes, your resentments, your dreams of becoming more, and then they turn those things into levers. The person who knows what you fear can predict your choices. The person who knows what you crave can direct them. Psychologists have spent decades showing how vulnerable the human mind is to suggestion, authority, repetition, and social proof. We are influenced by tone before evidence, confidence before truth, familiarity before accuracy. If we hear something enough times, it begins to feel real. If enough people seem to believe it, it begins to feel safe. If it flatters our identity, it becomes even harder to question. This is not a flaw in a few broken people. This is architecture. This is how the mind conserves energy. To doubt everything is exhausting. To investigate every claim is impossible. So the brain creates shortcuts. And those shortcuts are useful until someone learns how to exploit them. Look at advertising, politics, toxic relationships, cult dynamics, workplace pressure, social media algorithms. They all operate through a similar secret. They do not need to overpower your mind. They only need to guide it. They only need to frame reality in a way that makes your emotional reaction do the rest. A headline makes you angry before you verify it. A group makes you feel included before you question its values. A manipulative partner makes you feel guilty before you examine the facts. A brand makes you feel incomplete before offering you the product that will supposedly make you whole. The mechanism changes, but the doorway remains the same. Emotion first, reflection later. And perhaps you have felt this in your own life. Perhaps you have said yes when your soul wanted to say no. Perhaps you have laughed at something that hurt you, agreed with something you didn't fully believe, stayed in places that slowly erased your clarity, simply because leaving felt more painful than submitting. Perhaps you have watched yourself adapt to environments that rewarded your silence and punished your authenticity. And maybe you judged yourself for it. Maybe you called yourself weak. But what if the deeper truth is that you were responding exactly as a social, emotional, survival-driven human being is wired to respond? And if that is true, then the real question is not why you were influenced. The real question is, who taught you that your mind was safe from influence in the first place? Because the first step toward manipulation is often the illusion of immunity. The people who believe they cannot be manipulated are often the easiest to manipulate. Why? Because they stop watching the doors. They stop questioning the stories they love. They stop examining the emotions that certain messages awaken in them. They assume intelligence protects them. But intelligence without self-awareness can become a polished servant of illusion. A clever mind can justify almost anything once emotion has chosen the conclusion. Now, bring this out of theory and into life. Think of the teenager who changes their personality to fit a group and calls it self-discovery. Think of the employee who accepts constant disrespect because approval from authority feels like proof of worth. Think of the person who remains in a controlling relationship because the moments of affection feel too precious to lose. Think of the millions who scroll every day, slowly absorbing standards, fears, and desires that were planted in them so subtly they mistake them for personal truth. This is manipulation in its modern form, less obvious than chains, more intimate than commands. It enters through repetition, urgency, aesthetics, emotional resonance, and the aching desire to belong to something larger than yourself. And the tragedy is not only that people are manipulated. It is that many people build their identities out of the manipulation. They begin defending the very forces that diminish them. They protect the voices that confuse them. They become loyal to their own distortion because to question it would mean questioning who they have become. That is why change is so hard. Not because truth is unavailable, but because truth is expensive. It demands that you grieve the version of yourself that was built to survive under false narratives. So let me ask you something uncomfortable. If so much of what you believe was shaped by fear, approval, and repetition, how much of your life has truly been chosen by you? The reason this question hits so deeply is because everyone knows, somewhere inside, what it feels like to abandon themselves a little. Not always dramatically, sometimes in tiny daily betrayals. You smile when something hurts. You stay quiet when something matters. You imitate what gets rewarded. You censor your instincts to avoid conflict. You shape your image to be digestible. You begin to live like water taking the form of every container placed around you, until one day you no longer know your own shape. And this is where manipulation becomes emotional, not just intellectual. Because beneath all control lies a very human wound, the fear that being fully yourself may cost you love, safety, or significance. Many people do not submit to manipulation because they are fooled by arguments. They submit because they are terrified of exile. They are terrified of being the one person in the room who says, "This doesn't feel right." They are terrified of disappointing the family, the partner, the audience, the boss, the community, the algorithm, the mirror. So they trade inner truth for outer harmony, hoping the pain of self-betrayal will be quieter than the pain of rejection. A child learns this early. A child quickly discovers which emotions are welcomed and which ones are punished. Maybe sadness was ignored, maybe anger was shamed, maybe achievement was loved more than authenticity, so the child adapts. They become pleasing, useful, agreeable, impressive, invisible, whatever is necessary to preserve connection. But that adaptation often follows them into adulthood. And then, years later, they wonder why they are so vulnerable to guilt, pressure, praise, and fear-based control. The answer is painful and simple, because manipulation works best on the parts of us that were trained to earn love by surrendering our truth. That is why some of the most competent, kind, and intelligent people are also deeply manipulable. They are not gullible in the obvious sense. They are conscientious. They over-explain. They doubt themselves. They want to be fair. They want to be good. And manipulative people or systems know exactly how to weaponize those virtues. Make them feel selfish for having boundaries. Make them feel cruel for questioning authority. Make them feel arrogant for trusting their own perception. Suddenly the person is not being controlled through force, but through their own moral sensitivity. They become a prisoner of their conscience, while the manipulator remains hidden behind innocence, urgency, or righteousness. You see this in relationships when someone twists every conversation until the victim apologizes for reacting to mistreatment. You see it in society when people are made to feel inadequate unless they conform to impossible standards. You see it online when outrage is packaged as purpose and confusion is packaged as depth. You see it everywhere because manipulation succeeds wherever self-knowledge is weak and emotional hunger is strong. And if this idea has already resonated with you, imagine what comes next. Inscreva-se para não perder essa jornada. Because here is where the story begins to change. If manipulation enters through unconscious wounds, then freedom begins with conscious attention. The new perspective is not that you must become cold, suspicious, or emotionally numb. The goal is not to shut down your humanity. The goal is to understand it so deeply that it can no longer be used against you without your awareness. Real strength is not the absence of influence. Real strength is the ability to notice influence while it is happening. The first practical shift is learning to pause between emotion and action. Manipulation thrives on urgency. It wants you reactive, offended, guilty, excited, afraid, anything but still. The moment someone or something pressures you to decide before thinking, to obey before reflecting, to feel before examining, that is the moment to slow down. A pause is powerful because it interrupts automaticity. It creates space for the question manipulators fear most. What is happening inside me right now? Am I responding from clarity or from an activated wound? The second shift is to study your own patterns with brutal compassion. What kinds of messages hook you most easily? Is it praise, fear, belonging, scarcity, moral pressure, romantic intensity, intellectual superiority? Every person has a psychological fingerprint. Some are manipulated by the fear of missing out, others by the fear of being disliked, others by the dream of being chosen, admired, saved, or finally enough. Until you know the emotional buttons wired into your history, someone else will keep pressing them for you. The third shift is to rebuild your relationship with solitude. One of the deepest reasons people are easy to manipulate is that they cannot bear standing alone long enough to hear themselves clearly. A person who cannot tolerate aloneness will often cling to noise, approval, and borrowed certainty. But solitude, when embraced, becomes a kind of spiritual detox. It reveals which thoughts are yours and which ones were implanted. It allows buried intuitions to rise. It teaches you that being alone is not the same as being abandoned. And once you no longer fear your own company, you become far less dependent on voices that promise belonging at the cost of your freedom. Philosophy has long warned us about the seductions of the crowd. The Stoics spoke of mastering inner reactions. Existential thinkers spoke of the terror and dignity of choosing for oneself. Spiritual traditions across the world have pointed to the same mystery in different language. The unexamined self becomes easy prey for illusion. Whether you call it ego, conditioning, false self, or unconscious programming, the principle is the same. What is unseen rules you. What is seen can be transformed. So practice naming the game. When a message makes you feel suddenly smaller, ask what insecurity it is targeting. When someone flatters you intensely, ask what access they may be trying to gain. When a group offers certainty, ask what complexity it wants you to surrender. When fear rises, ask who benefits from your panic. When guilt appears, ask whether it is a signal of wrongdoing or a tool of control. These questions do not make you cynical. They make you awake. And there is another layer, one even deeper. Manipulation loses power when your identity is no longer for sale. The more desperate you are to be seen a certain way, the easier you are to control. If you need everyone to think you are kind, they can shame you into compliance. If you need everyone to think you are smart, they can bait you with intellectual vanity. If you need everyone to think you are strong, they can manipulate you through pride. But when you become rooted in something quieter and more stable, truth rather than image, integrity rather than approval, you stop negotiating your soul for applause. This does not happen overnight. It is a practice. It may begin with small acts, saying no without over-explaining, leaving conversations that distort your reality, refusing to absorb every trend into your identity, questioning your own impulses before obeying them, allowing others to misunderstand you rather than betraying yourself to be accepted. These are not dramatic gestures, but they are revolutionary, because each one teaches your nervous system a new lesson. I can remain connected to myself, even if connection with others becomes uncertain. But existe segredo ainda mais profundo que poucos conhecem. The ultimate reason people are easy to manipulate is not merely that they are emotional, social, or uncertain. It is that most people have never truly met themselves beneath the performance, and anything unknown can be impersonated. If you do not know your own voice, another voice can easily speak through you. If you do not know your own values, another set of values can quietly direct your life. If you do not know what peace feels like within you, you will keep mistaking stimulation, approval, and attachment for peace. Here is the revelation. Manipulation does not only tell you what to think, it teaches you who to be. It offers you a script, and if you are disconnected enough from your essence, you will perform it gratefully. That is why the battle is not only intellectual, it is existential. It is the battle to recover direct contact with your own consciousness before the world rents it out in fragments. There is a quote often attributed in different forms across philosophy and spirituality. Until you become conscious, the unconscious will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And that is the shock, isn't it? Many people call destiny what is actually conditioning. They call personality what is actually adaptation. They call love what is actually dependency. They call loyalty what is actually fear. And once you see that, a strange liberation begins. Because what was learned can be unlearned. What was programmed can be questioned. What was manipulated can become aware. So the real escape from manipulation is not becoming impossible to influence. That is neither realistic nor human. The real escape is becoming so honest with yourself that influence can no longer hide in disguise. It is becoming intimate with your wounds, your desires, your fears, your habits of self-betrayal, until they stop operating in darkness. It is learning to sit in the fire of uncertainty without grabbing the first comforting lie. It is choosing awareness over ease, truth over approval, essence over performance. And maybe that is the final paradox. People are easy to manipulate precisely because they are longing for something real. They are longing for love, meaning, identity, safety, transcendence. The tragedy is that they often search for these sacred things in places designed to exploit them. But the beauty is this: the same depth that makes you vulnerable can also make you free. Your sensitivity, your longing, your emotional intensity, these are not defects. They become dangerous only when they are unconscious. Once illuminated, they become the very path back to yourself. So remember this phrase, because it may stay with you long after this video ends. The mind that does not know itself becomes a house with open doors. Guard your doors, not with paranoia, but with presence. Not with fear, but with discernment. The world will always try to name you, shape you, hurry you, flatter you, divide you, and sell you versions of yourself that were never yours. Your task is to return again and again to the quiet center that cannot be bought. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, leave a like, comment your thoughts below, and inscreva-se no canal. And more than that, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who may be losing themselves without even realizing it. Because sometimes the first step to freedom is simply hearing, maybe for the first time, that the voice inside you is worth protecting.